Good afternoon, everyone. It's Sean Buchanan again at Equal Start, and we have an esteemed guest, Mr. Graham House, who I met at the Disruptors Network in September. And how he came to my notice is he made a grandiose speech about social workers becoming social leaders and how they're viewed by government in order to influence policy and get their just desserts going forward. So I've invited him on today to see how he can help the people decide how we move forward as a collective. So, Mr. House, can you tell us a bit about yourself for all those who are not aware of you?
Of course, yeah, Sean. And please, Graham, please.
Mm.
That'll be more comfortable for me. Thank you. It's good to see you again. Um, as much as you sort of beat me up there, as you know, on this pedestal, I put it back on you. Actually, it was the reason why I was at that event. I don't know, 6 weeks or so ago, is because the work that you and the team there do directly shapes our society, positively or negatively. The impact it has, positively or negatively, especially on young people. And that ultimately, if we get that right or improve it, and you're better supported, better funded, better educated, better trained, we want the impact to be greater because that contributes to a more resilient, socially aware society, which allows us to deliver to our true potential as people.
Sure.
So that's I put that back on you. You very much I found you to be a very inspirational guy, not just in the professional world you do, but in some of the personal challenges that you're entangled in. That gives you a lived experience, which is tough for many to get through that. I appreciate that. And you seem to have got through to a learned experience where you can apply that knowledge in a very purposeful way. So this is how change happens
Yeah,
for
it's
a
true.
greater good. You find people like you who are very humble, um, in the trenches, getting on with it. And I'm very
Try to.
proud to have met you that way. So yeah, it's more about. So my background, briefly, to answer your question, I spent 30 plus years in the armed forces. I wanted to be an astronaut. I still expect to be an astronaut. I might have to make my own rocket ship, but that's what I'm going to get.
That'd be great. That'd be great. We need that in
Uh,
the UK.
and I guess the positive out of my experience in life, if there is one to take, maybe as a sort of beacon for other young people, is I went through to the part of my teens. I went through the British education system, failed all my exams, everything,
Yes.
and yeah, and hit sort of age 16, being told by a system and people in the system that there wasn't really much for me because I'd failed everything. I wasn't showing any potential or prospect. But because I didn't believe that and didn't believe them, somehow I had enough self belief to follow my own path. I joined the military right at the bottom of the rank structure, with very limited responsibility. Went to night school to study the things that interested me, to get the qualifications I needed to fly. Was lucky enough with the people I met to be given support and guidance in how to achieve what I wanted. Was eventually selected for pilot training in the Air Force. Eventually became a frontline operational pilot. Supported most of the sort of modern day operations in the world today, Afghanistan and Iraq and everywhere else in the world. I'm very privileged to have supported, managed, led, commanded some of the most courageous people on the planet to do some extraordinary things,
Hmm.
whilst also being involved directly and closely with government to see how strategy, power, and intent can be slewed and drifts to cause incredible damage and catastrophic consequences for what I would call normal people in foreign lands. I think we can do better than that. So a lot of those experiences led me to work more closely with government, more senior leaders, to try and better understand what is it in our formative years that goes wrong, that makes us weak, insecure, ineffective, whilst giving a layer of accomplishment and qualification when actually we just can't communicate, we can't problem solve, we're not compassionate, we're quite destructive, and that causes damage to the younger generation. So
Yes, I agree.
that comes us full circle back to the conference that you spoke of, the disruptive leaders. This isn't disruptive leaders that we want to cause a revolution, not necessarily, but disruption to me is about thinking differently, seeing things differently, and asking more focused questions that get us towards the truth in a collaborative way, not in a destructive way, but in a deliberate way in order to improve things for the greater good. And I really say all of that because I look at my 11-year-old self who needs that. You know, and those 11-year-olds today all around the world, they're needing people like you to guide them during their pathway through their own lifetime. So that's why it's privileged to stay in touch with you, privileged to meet you. Very inspirational in the work that you're doing. That's it. Keep going.
Yeah, I noticed when looking into your background, you had spent a time as a special integrity advisor for a committee, APPG committee. How did you come about that? Because I found that very interesting.
Well, so what? So yeah, what's in that context? I guess this is how power works. You need to understand or try to understand power, how it works, how it doesn't work as well, how it's wanting to work. And I guess my generation, I'm fairly unique in this regard. And this is where the integrity matters, I think. It's a rare currency. We would like to think we strive for it, but rarely do we ever attain it because of other pressures and part of our formative years get in the way sometimes. It's not easy. But I guess my generation grew up in what we would call the analog age. And then at a certain part in our lifetime, we jumped into the digital age. So we're the first generation ever, and will be the only generation ever to have two reference points.
That's true.
We saw the old world, we see the new world. Whereas the younger generation today, anyone who's under 25, 30, also pioneering because they've grown up in the digital age. They're the first generation ever to grow up in the digital age. But every generation evermore will only have that reference. So when I look at my generation, with actually what I would call values-based thinking, we've just commemorated Remembrance Day, for example, both on Remembrance Sunday and on the 11th, Armistice Day.
Yeah.
It always reminds me of what would you fight for? What's worth fighting for? What isn't? How would you fight? And to what values base would you apply that humankind? What's your values? And I kind of guess that generation post-war, and especially when you look at through your ancestral lines and you go back to the Commonwealth, for example, and those characters that I was in Africa in the early part of this year at a war memorial in Kenya. Okay. It's astonishing to think these characters stepped up to support Britain in its time of need, and yet they're 8,000 miles away on the other side of the equator. That's the strength of humankind. If you can bring people together to a common purpose, that's incredibly impressive for humankind. And I guess that generation reminds me of a sense of values that over the years of the digital age, that's being eroded. We're going this way when I think we need to go that way. So your character, the work that you do, the fact you're even creating this broadcast to influence people, that tells me there's a passion there, there's a purpose there. Definitely. And as long as there are people like you around, then there's hope to recover that values base from where it is to where it needs to be, bring it back to a central position. So that's really how that came to be about. There was an element in Parliament that felt there's an erosion of integrity, an erosion of standards, an erosion of values. A small group was set up going back a few years. I was invited, I'm very privileged to be part of that in a really, really small way. It's got momentum. People far more impressive than me are part of that and continuing to be part of that. I'm much more, I'm less able than many are and more passive because of that. But there are people that make a real difference in the positive sense. And you don't always hear about them, and they don't really make the headlines, but they're
Yeah,
there.
they don't. That's why I created this unheralded hero section of Equal Start, because I said that I've realized a lot of the preconceptions I had about how the political process and the lobbying groups. I said, oh, it's not people being paid off, or they got special interests from corporate entities that are not always work in conduce and cohesion with normal people. But when I went
Right.
in there, I found, say, people like yourselves. They said they're actually nice people and they have got a real passion, but no one really knows about them, and they don't really seek the limelight. So people kind of lose hope because people need figureheads. I guess, like saying
Well,
where everyone knows Winston Churchill in the World War when he used to say that we'll fight them on the beaches and things like that. But a lot of the everyday heroes, you don't see them get that kind of headlines or publicity. So people think, oh, those are only special elite people that get to have their say and be listened to by the majority. So it was very interesting to find, obviously, yourself, especially at the Disruptors Network, traveling all the way from Scotland to come down there in your free time. There's not many people that would be willing to do that. So I found it very interesting when you approached me,
no, I
because
would
of
do
the
that.
background and that he's a military fella with the Royal Air Force.
Well, it didn't take me long to realise. We can go on and expand on that if you like, but it didn't take me long to realise by listening to you that when I'm looking at young people who need good influence around them, good role models around them, whatever that looks like today, uh, I do believe the military has an important function to play there, a contribution to a sense of values, purpose, duty, teamwork. I think it has a function to play there. But it's going to need people like you in it.
Mm.
Um, because you display those characteristics, but you'll be more relatable to young people in London than I would be.
Mm.
Without being disingenuous to you or myself, we have different. We're perceived to be different,
Of course.
and young people, for your experience or my experience, to really land well with them, they're going to need influential people around them that are relatable to them. It's going to be difficult for someone like me to walk into a sort of social environment of young people around Hackney, for example, from the Highlands of Scotland,
Mm.
as a
Fair
white
enough. I was there
middle-aged
last
guy
weekend.
to relate to those.
Mm.
Exactly, I got little chance, even though I'd love it. There's loads of barriers to get through of prejudice and bias, myself as well as others, whereas you'd cut straight through that. So that's why I'd encourage you to stay involved in your youth engagement, stay involved in the tough parts of town where these characters have got they've got choices to make, go this way or that way. One is disastrous, one
Mm.
is more encouraging. And they'll need people like you at a really important stage of their life, sort of, especially young boys, sort of 9 years old to 18. They'll
Yes,
need
I do.
characters like you to guide them. So it was pretty obvious to me when I met you that you have a lot of power available to yourself because of your authenticity. To just apply it in any way that you can. Anything as a contribution. It's
Mm.
there's a quote that guides me well. If you'd have probably heard of a guy called Martin Luther King.
Yes, yes, yes.
So I've never met him. Obviously, I've never. I just read a lot and read a lot about people like him characters. There's one of his quotes that guides me well, uh, and it also keeps me patient because I'm a naturally impatient person.
I
But
wouldn't
his
say. I wouldn't think that the way you carry yourself and speak. Yeah.
oh no, I want it all done now. Get on with it. Let's go. Let's go. But he's learned an awful lot in his experiences, And the quote is something like, forgive me if I've got this inaccurate, but it's something like, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice.
Yeah, I remember that.
And my interpretation of that is we just keep going as best as we can towards a better progressive society. And that utopia that we aspire towards is beyond our own lifetime.
Yeah, definitely.
And once you appreciate that, then you realize it's not about you then. It's not about your experiences that are relevant. They're only relevant to you. The trick is to how do you make it relevant to someone else who's younger than you, that can be inspired by that or give thought to that. And that's where I would look to someone like you as well. Actually, you're probably more powerful than I'll ever be. So it was
No, I
more.
doubt that. I doubt that. I doubt that. I'm trying, but I doubt it.
That's your humility shining through there. So yeah, you touched on something interesting. I wouldn't say it upset me. Here I was on that day. I didn't know anyone. I knew Alice. I've got a lot of time for Alice Loving, one of the team there. I didn't know anyone else. I flew down because I was interested. I was invited. I flew on my own budget. That's no problem. I found you on time. It's pretty good, unsupervised. That's unusual. And I listened, and I met some wonderful people, and I listened to everyone's experiences and their conversation. And what struck me as a theme is the very language is important, as you know. And as soon as you consider yourself or title yourselves or claim yourselves to be workers, then some people, because of our bias, will treat you as workers. And they'll put you down on this level of society. When actually what you're really doing is making massive difference in someone's life every day.
That's true. That's true.
In a very hostile environment with loads of constraints and loads of emotions and huge pressures, but you're making a difference in a very positive way. That is pure leadership there. Someone who's doing that work has a care for a greater good, or they wouldn't be doing that sort of work.
They wouldn't be doing this, definitely. Definitely.
These jobs are not necessarily well paid. They're not easy. They're not easy paper rounds. It's tough. You're right in the trenches there. Well, that's where leaders are born. That's where it happens. You have the grit comes there. So if all it needs then is to allow you to get to the audience that you want and have your story heard across all strata of society, especially in government, well, an easy way to do that is just change the word from social workers to social leaders, because that's what you are. Mm-hmm. And suddenly you attract a different audience. You don't lose the other audience, you've got them because they get it. But you're getting into where policy is made, crafted, shaped, funded. And if you're not operating in that space, you'll be just seen as noise.
Yeah, of course. Noisy neighbors, definitely.
And that's not actually true to what your needs are. You've got a great story, and I would want that to be heard. I was really inspired. Some of the young characters there that are on the stage, or either participating or directly contributing. Some of the young characters there, you'd want them in any team in any sector of society. These are natural, talented people that have clear leadership strengths. But they're not necessarily seeing themselves as that. And I felt that was a bit of a shame, actually. So if my couple of words that I foolishly said gives people a way to think about your true purpose here and where you really fit in, and a bit of encouragement to keep going and punch through these barriers that get in the way, then you punch through, true to Martin Luther King. That arc bends. You just got to keep pushing it and bending it. It's steel. It's not iron. It won't break. It's humankind. It's steel. We can do incredible things if we bring ourselves together to a common purpose.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's really, it was more you inspired me than anything else, actually. It was the other way around.
To be fair, that's why I reached out to you afterwards, because have you spoken to Dr. Alice since then?
Yeah, a couple of times. Yeah.
Okay. Has she asked you to join the Disruptors Network?
Yeah, but it's more. I think if I'm hesitant on anything, and I'm happy to join anything if I think the cause is purposeful and powerful. But I never want to lead these things. I always want to be in the support. Well, by leadership to me is, contributing to creating an environment that allows people to deliver to their potential. That's what I think good leadership is.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
Have you got the tools? Have you got the space? Have you got the funding? Have you got the environment that allows you to feel safe and operate to freely to where you want to go to? That's what I think is my job as a, if some people think that's a leadership role, but I tend to do it in a passive way, in a supportive way, in a shepherding way rather than a pulling way, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I'm naturally very empowering, and I'd look to people like yourselves and Alice and say, well, look, this was your initiative. Don't let people hijack it. You go for it, and I'm walking with you. It's a sort of, another quote that guides me well is, never above you, never below you, always beside you.
Yeah.
So I'm interested where you go. I'll walk with you there.
To be fair, when we had the meeting after the official meeting, in a more informal environment, I told him what you said about the funding aspect. But I know Dr. Alice, she has a kind of program where she does the analysts parenting stars for people that have been exposed to child services and been monitored. But she said she wants to expand that work. So I said, in order to do that, unless we self-financed through employment or the small enterprise